Hey Becca, this is Helen. I'm just going to do a quick recording of the changes I have so far and then a couple follow-up questions. So first things first is that within the Canary file, there's going to be a new section that's called version 3. This will have the new prototype. And if you go to the prototypes, you'll see that this is called spend by org, totals and percentages. So I'm going to hide this over here so this goes full screenish. Okay, so the very first thing you'll see is that we have replaced the L1, 2, 3 with actual orgs. So I've made all those suggested changes, including changing the types to be state, changing these column headers here to be total spend and agency type, and then making sure that the math for total spend is correct here. So if I go ahead and click on this and expand it, the first thing you'll notice is that we have this little sigma icon here. So instead of having like sigma in parentheses right here with an info icon, I decided to combine them to just keep things simple and clean. And if you hover over it, the tooltip will say data in this row represents the sum of data in nested rows. So I just copied and pasted that straight from the Slack message you sent me. You'll see that underneath that is the actual L1 itself, and then it shows the percentage of the total spend. And so this would be the L2 parent, and it'll show you that it's 37%. So anytime there are percentages on screen, they add up to 100% for that section. So this adds up to 100, this adds up to 100. Oh, gotta fix a small visual glitch. And so on and so forth. This adds up, this adds up. You'll notice that it doesn't say 100% at the top here. And when we click on this and expand the parent, this has a sigma icon again. The parent slash, the overview shell is what I used to call it, also doesn't have that 100%. So now you have the actual L2 org here and the L3, and they have their relative spends with that percentage. And then if you added these together, 14, 23, and 63, that would get to 100. Minor note that I round based on the first decimal. So if it's 22.5%, I round it to 23%. If it's 22.49%, I round that to 22. So that's how these are created. This percentage breakdown is shown throughout the rows. So all the way down to Fastenal here, same situation. And then last but not least, if you go to this and you click on it, the parent-child relationships are broken. You just see the organizations as they are with their total spend and everything. And there are no percentages here because the percentages are only important if you see them relative to, uh, you know, the whole pie. So that's what I have done so far. Now, there are two things I wanted to follow up on. One is that I'm curious how users perceive the difference between an L1 and its quote unquote shell right here. So this is the shell that's kind of like the thing that encompasses everything underneath, right? And we show that by indenting this here. But do they understand the difference between these two? Like, why is it duplicated? And why are the percentages different? So I'm wondering if there's a better visual way to convey that on top of having the sigma. I think that this is useful. I just think that, if I'm a user and I'm looking at this and I see duplicates, I would have to remind myself what the differences were. The second thing, and this is going to be semi-hard to prototype, but I can just show a mock-up of what it looks like. But I would like to find some way to clean this up visually. So there's two things I want to fix. One is that when you expand these sort of just instantly appear, right? So I think in a lot of data tables, it looks like when you expand it, it kind of slides out underneath, like slides down here. And that way you get the idea that these two come from here. Versus like right now, it just instantaneously appears. And you're like, oh, okay, where does this get? The second thing is that how I've designed these columns is that they are they hug the contents. So, for example, I have this 56,032, 37%, and then it looks like this width currently, this column, right? If I expand this, you see this column changes in width, and that's because now we have a number that is like slightly longer. So the column width increases to adjust for it. And if you look throughout the data table, if I just click on this a couple times, like if you look at WW Granger or MSC Industrial Supply, you'll notice that the width of the columns are changing. And that's because, for example, this $10,171 with the 71 percentage on the side, you'll notice that that is like the longest text that this column will ever have. So the column ends up being that width. I don't like the columns constantly changing in width. It is consistent in hugging the contents, but I think that we should probably set, like let's say for all of these columns, set like an X width for all of them. So like they are all 200 pixels across, no matter what. That way, um, the data tables will look consistent even if you're like expanding or collapsing these things. The columns will always be the same width. The subcolumns will always be the same width. And then whether or not the content fills up all 200 pixels of that width is, it doesn't matter because visually everything is much more, I don't know, I would say coherent or cohesive and not constantly changing. So yeah, that is the plan. Let me know what you think. Thank you.